Movies. We see them all over the place. They can make us happy, sad, scared, and also inspired to do incredibly great things. Every single movie has its own story to tell and its own emotion to communicate. Hello ladies and gentlemen from all over the world, welcome to my channel. So today I want to talk about 10 of the most inspirational films that I personally have that really deal with facing adversity. And I think they're now there's so many films that can be in this category, so many inspirational films, but I'm going to just select a random 10 that I think really can kind of inspire anyone that watches these films, and you might have even watched it yourself. And I think what I love about them is that they really talk about adversity, and they all tell the story about someone who wasn't expected to do a certain something, who did that something, or simply are just films that I think are very feel-good films because they're very cheerful, and they're inspirational films that I think can really make you feel good when you're going through some kind of tough situation, that will basically hopefully motivate and drive you to kind of take action and kind of uplift you after finishing the film. Even if you heard of some of these films, I'm also going to dive a little bit deep and talk about some of the takeaways that I think that you're going to be able to hopefully get if you do watch these films. So definitely stick around and watch all the way through, and also because maybe if one of these films have also helped you, maybe because you've seen them, because some of these are pretty popular films, let me know and drop it down in the comments below, just letting me know, like how this film maybe have touched you, what was your takeaway, and maybe films that have not been mentioned that maybe you guys would love to recommend that really helped you guys when you guys were going through some kind of tough time, or really just needed some kind of inspirational push to do and live life and accomplish what you hope to set out to accomplish. They're not in any kind of particular order whatsoever, so they're all, just top 10, not in particular order about which one I think is particularly the best. And they're chosen from a combination of their storyline, to the soundtrack, to the actual filming aspect, to really just the deeper message that comes out of all of these movies. What I love is that the majority of these will also be based on some kind of true story. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Okay, so the first movie that I really recommend if you're looking for some inspirational movie is going to be The Pursuit of Happyness. Now, many of you guys have probably already seen this because it's such a popular movie, but again, stick around because I feel like a lot of the other movies may be less popular that, hopefully, but the first one, of course, the most classic one about rags to rich is The Pursuit of Happyness. It's a movie that stars Will Smith, and if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, because it talks about a homeless man who basically struggles through a lot of adversity and trying to basically find a job, launch his career in an industry, provide for his kid. Incredibly great acting, a lot of inspirational moments, scenes, so definitely check that one out if you're looking for inspiration. The second movie that I'm really going to highly recommend is going to be The Bucket List, that stars Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. And what I love about this movie is that regardless of your age, what this movie is about is that it basically talks about two older senior citizens who basically try to accomplish and run through a list to really be able to live life despite the fact that they're of old age. What I love about this film is that aside from the fact that there's incredible actors, great humor, so even if you don't take a lesson out of it, there's so much entertainment that comes out of it. It involves travel, but what I love about it, I think, is that it really communicates the lesson and takeaway that even if you're an old age, as long as you're healthy enough to kind of enjoy yourselves, it's never too late to kind of go out there and chase out your passion, your dream, to really be able to live life. But it also communicates that time is a very sensitive thing. So if you are a young person, never waste time, always value every minute, and it's also just something outside of the film base, as I always tell a lot of people when I have conversations, that I think the most important thing that every single person has in this world is not necessarily their money, because as important as money is, it's absolutely important, time is the essence, because without time you can't really do anything else in the world. And so the time that you slip by every single minute is a minute that you'll never get back in your life. So if you're spending your minute right now watching a person talk on their camera, thank you so much, because I really do value your presence here, since but with that said, I think the idea is that movie talks a lot about really valuing valuing time, age, if you're a young person, if you're feeling old. So for example, like if you're in your 20s, who's a lot of people by the time they hit their 20s sometimes feel a little bit aged because they're not in their teens anymore and they're entering adult life. What it shows you is to always really be able to have a young spirit, to live life, maximize time, and realize how precious and fast it moves. Okay, the third and the fourth movie, which I'm gonna combine together because they have a similar somewhat plot or premise, is going to be The Freedom Writers and Stand and Deliver. Both of these movies are heavy classics that I personally love growing up, and I actually saw it in school too. One of them, The Freedom Writer, basically deals with writing, and then Stand and Deliver is a movie that deals mostly on the math side, but the premise is very similar, and basically both of these movies talk about growing up in an inner city school, a very rundown world where the students that go to these schools are not really expected to amount to much, and they sincerely really are the underdogs. And I think depending on your background, for me, because I went to public school also for most of my life here in the hardcore New York City, I also have really been able to resonate because I kind of relate to a lot of the things that kind of go on, because I went to school, you know, with many people that were poor, many people that grew up in inner cities, and it was very difficult. But regardless of your background, I think there's a very strong emotional aspect to it, especially if you're a kid yourself that's watching this. But whether or not you're a family, whether or not you're like a child, a student, you're a younger person, or you're an older parent, you know, I think that these two movies have a lot of emotional and inspirational stuff that can really touch anybody, no matter what your age, no matter who you are in your background. But again, particularly if you are someone that grew up with a very rough childhood and you're looking for kind of some inspiration to get yourself out of where you're currently at. Okay, the fifth movie is going to be a popular classic that hopefully everyone has seen, and it's going to be Forrest Gump by Tom Hanks. It's an incredible classic movie that hopefully every single person has seen this, but if you haven't yet, it basically just talks about someone who kind of has a mental disability, and he's not really expected to do too much, but despite that fact, he overcomes so much adversity. He proves the majority of his haters wrong. He's basically like an athlete, he's athletic, well, I don't want to spoil the plot, but he does a lot of really incredible things, so definitely check that movie out. And the sixth one is going to be more of a movie series, so not necessarily a specific movie, and it's going to be the Miyazaki films, all of like the Studio Ghibli, because the majority of these films, they tell a very enriching story. There's a great storyline, great soundtrack that goes with it, but I think what I love is that basically almost every single Ghibli film, except maybe Grave of the Fireflies, they all have a very uplifting or some kind of like mood that really makes you feel grateful. It kind of really makes you think about life. If you wanted a specific Ghibli film, I personally really love Spirited Away. That's one of my favorite ones. Kiki's Special Delivery Service is also another really great one. But I think a lot of them have a very good, a feel-good kind of mood that if you're going through some kind of like difficulties, or if you're looking for kind of inspiration to kind of uplift, I think that the Studio Ghibli films can really provide that. And because I'm listing a series instead of just one film, that also means that now you hopefully have plenty of watching and films to basically enjoy and do coming up. The seventh film is going to be a foreign film, and this one is going to be Amelie. Amelie is basically, it's a very famous French film, probably one of the most famous French movies out there. And if you haven't really seen it, basically what it's about is it just talks about a girl who basically grows up in Paris, and she does a lot of very like kind, friendly, nice things for a lot of people. It has an incredible soundtrack, a very beautiful romantic feel to it, and I think what I love about this is that it really kind of inspires you to kind of become a good person, because I think sometimes when you're going through difficulties, it's very easy to sometimes maybe walk the dark side or to just not want to do too much. But I think that what I love about this film is that it's hilarious, There's a lot of funny aspects about it, and you might learn some French. I also happen to take French, but I think it's a very uplifting movie that can really get you to kind of become a good person and try to do good out in this world. A lot of random acts of kindness and just a lot of genuineness and pure-hearted, light-hearted and happy movie that I think it can provide. The 8th movie that's going to be mentioned is going to be Silver Linings Playbook, and this one's a more of a modern film. Probably less popular than some of the other more traditional films like Forrest Gump and Pursuit of Happyness, but still insanely popular nonetheless. And it basically stars Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper. I believe it's on Netflix right now. Definitely, at least it was on Netflix, I'm pretty sure at one point. But basically what the movie is about is that it basically talks about someone who's mentally disabled, and he basically is trying to recover and bring his life back together. It talks about him trying to I guess overcome a past relationship. What I love is that if you're someone who's ever been an underdog, if maybe you go through like a lot of like personal mental disabilities also, like I know I had my own like mental difficulties when I was growing up because I was not the best student out there. But what I love about it is that it really inspires you that regardless of who you are, but especially if you can relate to the character of someone who is bipolar or just had some kind of thing that made you a little bit more unique and different, it kind of really inspires you to kind of go chase out a better life. And I think that it just really talks about their journey, about trying to overcome this and basically build a relationship, start life again, and just become a really, really great person. And it's also hilariously funny. And if you're from Philly, where this movie takes place, it's a great watch. Definitely go check it out. And it's popular. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper's in it, you know what I mean? And the 9th movie I'm going to talk about is going to be Good Will Hunting, and it's probably another insanely popular classic movie from the 90s, but if you haven't seen it yet, I think it's an incredibly fantastic movie to watch, especially if you're a college student or if you're a grade school student that's about to go into college, but even if you're a graduate. And I think it just talks about someone who's very, very gifted and smart, but because of a lot of personal past difficulties and traumatic experiences, he's kind of put at a little bit of a disadvantage. And I think because of this, it's an incredibly great movie because it tells you to kind of never, and there's so many life lessons that you can learn that maybe I need to make another video talking about like the deep messages and symbols that are found in that movie. But basically it just talks a lot about someone who grew up with not a lot of opportunity. And what it really comes to show you sometimes is that like if you really set your mind to it, there's a lot of incredibly talented people out there that if just given them the opportunity to do so, they have the potential to potentially shine. But sometimes life really is, there's a lot of unfairness to it and a lot of difficulties that go on with it. And I think this movie really kind of lets you see things on a deeper level, because I think sometimes, when you see people do bad things, you sometimes are very quick to judge. It's very, very easy to kind of just judge people on the surface. And what Good Will Hunting talks about is that it inspires people that, whether or not you're a janitor or someone that came from a very, very poor background or just didn't have as much opportunities, the talent you can often still find inside. And when you are able to change and touch people from the inside, when you're able to find people that you can relate to, of whatever difficulty you're going through, I think it really uplifts your soul, and so many great things can potentially happen through it. I think it also low-key kind of teaches you a lot about what really matters in life and what really makes a person have a good life and what's truly important and worth chasing, because it deals with like education and love, and a romantic aspect too. So it also stars Matt Damon and Robin Williams, who are two incredibly great actors, especially Robin Williams, who's one of my absolute favorites. So definitely check it out if you haven't. And the final film that's going to be on this list, which is based on a true story, is going to be Long Walk to Freedom. And it's basically a movie about Nelson Mandela. And if you've never never watched that movie, or if you don't even know his life story, definitely a great, I think it's more of like a documentary style movie, and I think it's a lot less popular, I think, than the other movies that I've mentioned. At least, like, I'm pretty sure not as many people have talked about it, but it basically just talks about Nelson Mandela's life, who has an incredibly great life story. What's inspirational is that it's also based on a real life person, a true story, and it's basically just about someone who grew up and lived in Africa, South Africa, and it's during a very, very difficult time period. He basically went to prison for many, many years, and without spoiling the plot, he's just a very, very down-to-earth guy. It talks a lot about forgiveness. It talks a lot about positivity, overcoming obstacles. There are so many, many inspirational things, and I think no matter where you are in life, when you're able to hear the story about someone who went to prison for over 20 years, trapped there, but he still has that that power and strength to kind of still go out there and see the world in much more positive ways. There are so many inspirational, motivating factors to this movie, and I think it can really touch anybody that watches it, again, regardless of who you are, whether or not you can relate to that situation, no matter your age, whether you're a young person, an older person, whether you're poor, you're rich, whatever race, economic background. I think it's a beautiful movie that I highly recommend. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This is actually my first time doing something like this. I made this largely because I just did a film review, so I kind of was just thinking about maybe creating some kind of video that's centered around the film topic. So I was like, you know, what better way than to maybe just make a top 10 films kind of thing, you know, top 10 films that are super inspirational and fun and cool. So hopefully you guys like this. Comment down below if you've seen any of these movies, what you guys think about them. You know, maybe if there's a movie that you really grew up that really inspired you that you haven't really shared, that hasn't been mentioned yet, drop it down in the comments and share that favorite movie, because I'd also love to take a look at it too, you know, because I think a huge part of this is just all social. You know, it's about building a community where we kind of all exchange ideas. Everyone has seen different movies, and so share yours down here below. Subscribe, like, hit the bell notification button that's down below when you subscribe, if you do subscribe, hopefully, because if you hopefully found this somewhat enriching. And I'm going to be pumping a whole bunch of videos, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and you guys are awesome. Stay that way and keep watching, keep enjoying, and live life.